Welcome, everyone, to a sunny and snowy Friday here in early January. Happy 2025, of course, and 2025 going to be the year of Media Row. Welcome to the Media Row podcast. I'm Justin Miller, the host, where really what I want this podcast to be is a Missouri Valley Conference, Drake Bulldogs heavy podcast, but also we won't ignore like the college football playoff. We're going to talk about that today, but it's a great Friday. Today's going to be a great day. The weekend's going to be great, loaded with some packed MVC matchups. Drake women play Saturday. Drake men play on Sunday, so I'll be busy this weekend. And just a few housekeeping things as we round out this week. We are now officially on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so a huge thank you to everyone that's been following along as I've been, working this thing out. Really going to start promoting this starting today. Going to get it out on social media. I've been posting, the shows and the highlights all throughout my time trying to figure everything out with this podcast. But I didn't want to start, telling everyone, hey, go check this out just yet, because I didn't want people going to just a YouTube page that only had 2 videos up, didn't even have a logo at the time. So now that we have our logo, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts. Really excited to just grow this thing. If anyone's interested in wanting to try to sponsor, please contact me at Justin M 101100 at Gmail. Again, that's Justin M 101100 at Gmail. Shoot me an email, comment in the video, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Just if you're a fan, if you want to disagree with one of my takes, which, man, with the way I'm picking these college football playoff games, I'm sure a lot of you want to disagree, but maybe I'm helping you out. Maybe I'm that voice that I give the take and you just go the opposite way because you know it's going to be wrong. But just a huge thank you to everyone. Can't wait to get this started. Monday through Fridays, we're going to be doing this. Plan to get it out at least by 2 o'clock. Some days, after a big game like last night, sometimes it could take longer to edit everything down, get the videos posted with Pullman, the players, all that good stuff. So sometimes it could be a little longer, but definitely out by 2 o'clock is the plan. Can't wait. So let's just jump into it. Drake women's basketball last night went to the Knapp Center. Actually a pretty good crowd. Again, Drake does the J term where students have basically all of January free, which I loved as a student, but I live in Des Moines, born and raised, so I, of course, went to every game. But no students, really, for the most part, but still a good turnout when you're not playing a UNI, you're not playing a powerhouse team. And the Drake Bulldogs really needed them in that first half. So Drake takes on UIC. They beat the Flames 86-63, but that first half was a struggle. Drake, 9 of 22 from the field in that first quarter, 6 of 18 in the second, so it was a little better. But overall, just kind of a lid on the hoop early on. Drake was down by 2 at halftime, 38-36, and they were battling not only the defenders wearing UIC colors, but they were battling the refs too. Both teams were. And like I said, while I'm a Drake fan and while I'm going to be Drake heavy, I'm going to talk about games and what I watched in the best I can, non-biased way. There were calls that Drake didn't get, and there were calls the Flames didn't get in that first half. And there's an extent. I like refs letting teams play. I like them letting them be physical. I mean, hell, the Bulldogs defense for the men is as physical as defense as you'll get. But to an extent, when Katie Dennebeer is getting hit on moving screens constantly and getting knocked down to the floor, you have to call that. At least once in a great while, get some sort of call. And then Anna Miller, I love Anna Miller. and we're going to praise her in her first half and second half performance, just her consistency. But to the UIC head coach, there was multiple times where it looked like she went over the back for those offensive rebounds. And you had Pullman begging for calls. There was a play. So Ava Hawthorne comes off the bench for Drake. Fantastic. I love Ava Hawthorne. I think she could easily be one of the front runners for 6th Player of the Year in the Missouri Valley. So she gets 2 quick fouls. And they were kind of ticky-tacky, in my opinion. But the third one that she got in that first half was, I don't know how you make that call. A clean swipe from behind, pokes out the ball, and that sent the Knapp Center into a roar. I mean, you have to set Ava Hawthorne for most of the second half then with 3 fouls. But that play right there, we're going to get to other players that made huge impacts. But that play right there stuck out to me, and just, you had all this emotion from the fans, from the players, from Pullman, I think, she's fun to just watch on the sideline. There's a handful of coaches I just love to watch coach. Ben McCollum is quickly becoming one of those guys, but it's been, Bill Self at Kansas, an absolute blast to watch on the sideline. Tom Izzo for Michigan State. But Allison Pullman is one of those coaches that I find myself I watch just as much of what's happening on the court as what she's doing on the sideline, who she's talking to, who she's making laugh, or who she's getting on. And also she goes into just straight up placing players, yelling, "This is when you cut, pick and roll," yelling out the plays almost. I love watching how she coaches, but she's always been kind of a exciting demeanor, but I've never seen her kind of jump up and down in frustration and plead to the refs as much as she did after that Ava Hawthorne foul. And while most teams could let that get to their head, you're losing to a team you feel like you should be beating at home in the first half. It's been a struggle shooting offensively. Defense, you're getting calls for fouls when you don't see them, or you're not getting calls on moving screens. So all that can be frustrating, but when you have a veteran group of women that Drake has, they just performed. They fixed it. And it was very exciting to see. And I don't know what Allison Pullman said at halftime, but when a team was down 38-36 to a UIC team that didn't have great depth, Drake is way more athletic, way stronger shooting team, and wasn't performing in that first half. You had UIC shooting 60%, 40% from 3 in the first quarter, 43% in the second quarter, 50% from the 3-point arc in the second quarter as well. And you go into halftime, and the crowd's kind of sitting there like, okay, there's some major changes that need to be made. Before we get into Courtney Becker and what she did in this second half, here's Allison Pullman, Drake head coach, her words of what she said going into leaving halftime, and what led Drake to their 6th straight victory.
Well, every halftime presents something new. And so this specific halftime was one just to make our team very, very aware of some details. And so in listening to their feedback and then giving them, our own coaches' feedback, was mostly that, we were losing the rebounding battle. We had lost the rebounding battle by 5 at half. And so making them aware of those different things, making them aware of different things where we could have, just small details of where we could definitely have success, and really mostly just talking about what they were feeling, what we were feeling, and then coming up with really those adjustments that we could be able to make in the second half. And we sure did.
And a huge shout out to Tommy Birch from the Des Moines Register. Got to hang out with my guy, Tommy. Tommy's always been great. Great writer for the Des Moines Register. Covers just about any sport. Mainly Iowa Cubs in the summer, but Iowa State women's basketball. He covers Iowa basketball, Drake basketball. He covers everything. and has always been a great supporter, great friend. Was very excited to hear about this podcast. And I think because in the summer, when it's slower, I plan to do interviews with athletes, coaches, athletic directors, presidents, producers, videographers, all that good stuff, and just hear their stories. He is easily a guy I will reach out to because he's just always been there to support me and one of the most nicest, positive people I've met. So Tommy, one of the guys that Allison Pullman was with and interviewing yesterday after the game, wasn't just me. It always feels good when that media room, the Morrison room, is a little busier. But so Allison Pullman gives her halftime speech, and it works. This Drake team, from being down 2 in the matter of 7 minutes and 7 seconds, goes on a 20-2 run. 20-2. And just dominates. And it mostly comes from a graduate student, someone that could have left, could have started her career, and stayed, trying to win back-to-back-to-back Missouri Valley titles. Courtney Becker. Courtney Becker, career night, 26 points. She entered the game 4 of 15 from 3, finished 4 of 7. And before we get into her crazy night, here's Courtney Becker in her own words of just what the fans meant to her and just how the night felt. And when you're on, you're on. Here's Courtney Becker.
Well, I kind of started a little slow in the first half, so my teammates and coaches kind of pumped me up at halftime as well. And when I came out of the game, and it was really awesome when they started to fall because we've been working hard in the gym because we're off of school right now, so we're getting lots of threes up, lots of free throws up. So it kind of was really awesome to see that pay off.
And you just know it's your night when you get the ball and someone has their hand up to your face guarding you. There's no open look at all, and the entire Knapp Center yells, "Shoot it!" She was on one last night, 26 points. And you could see her get into a rhythm at the end of the half because while that first half was a struggle for the Bulldogs, she finished with 6 of the last 8 points for Drake in a matter of a 2-minute span. And in that second half, she could just feel it. And she was doing it by hustling on the floor. She was doing it by stretching the floor, by hitting threes. One of her biggest nights and biggest moments. And it's always so satisfying when you see a veteran player like Courtney Becker, who, like I said, could have left, could have started a career. I mean, I know you love playing basketball, but it's kind of tough to want to go back to school at times, especially like right now. It would be tough for me to want to go back to school for a 5th year like that. I would not want to do that. That's why I graduated after 4 years. But it just shows what Pullman, the culture she's built, and just you see the other players that Courtney Becker came up behind. You have people like Grace Berg that stuck around, and Courtney Becker is the Grace Berg of this year's Drake Bulldogs team. She's that veteran presence on the floor. I wrote down in the first half, I wasn't even impressed with her scoring because she was good in the first half scoring too, but it was her ability to grab the offensive rebound. She had 3 in the first half, and she just always has a nose for the basketball. So Courtney Becker, 26 points, a career high. Before that, 16 was her career high. And it's just satisfying to see a player that fans who have covered this team and watched this team love Courtney Becker and know Courtney Becker, but maybe, people that just wanted to go out and see a good women's basketball game don't know about her as much as they would a Katie Dinnebeer or Anna Miller, who's been getting awards for Defensive Player of the Year for the Missouri Valley consistently. So it's nice and satisfying to see Courtney Becker have a night like how she did. Anna Miller, like we said, we were going to praise her. My biggest thing with Anna Miller that I love this season is her confidence just growing continuously behind the arc. Again, last night, Anna Miller finished 2 of 4 from the 3-point line, finished with 20 total points, 5 assists, 2 blocks, and 7 total rebounds. Just a strong outing from Anna Miller. She was the main force in that first half when Katie Dinnebier couldn't get anything going. Courtney had those 6 points in the final 2 minutes, but for the most part was looked upon as someone to clean up the glass, be a defensive force. Ava Hawthorne off the bench was getting fouls, so you were really trying to get the ball into Anna Miller, and she did a great job. And in the second half, I asked Coach Pullman about this, is another moment that caught my eye of that's a different Anna Miller than even from a year ago. We'd seen it a couple of times, but this just looked smoother. She looked confident with it, and she gets the ball at the top of the key, pump fakes, dribbles with the left hand, blow past layup. And while most people will be like, okay, that's not a dunk. That's not a reverse layup, a fadeaway 3. No, it's not. But we haven't seen Anna Miller play with that style. I don't think I can't remember Anna Miller having that in her arsenal in a conference game. I mean, her confidence just continues to grow and grow. And it's great. And that's what Drake needs, because while they have some good post players coming up behind Anna Miller, she is truly the force. You have Katie Dinnebier at guard, who puts up 18 plus. Katie finished with 16 last night, but averages about 18 points a game. You have Anna Miller, who's averaging about 15 a game. And you just get those two involved. And then, of course, Drake's best asset and what led them to a victory last night is they're just constant depth. Whose night is it going to be? You know Katie's going to get hers. You know Anna's going to get hers. But someone else is going to have a great night just with all the talent that's loaded on that bench and on that roster for Pullman and the Drake Bulldogs. Allison Pullman, a huge congrats to Allison Pullman. She wins her 6th straight game. It's the 5th time in her 5 years at Drake that she has had a 6-game winning streak. So a huge shout out. Congratulations to Allison Pullman. Always great to talk to her. And next up for Drake, Saturday, quick turnaround. They play Valpo tomorrow. Valpo 0-5 on the road, 5-8 overall. They just lost to UNI, and I just think with Drake's, again, depth and their confidence continuing to grow, I have full confidence Allison Pullman and this Drake team will get a victory. So this is something I learned, or maybe I just didn't notice it, but I'm looking at the calendar and the Drake women's basketball team, it always felt like you would get at least 2 or 3 days off, kind of like the men. And a day off, that is a normal in the Missouri Valley Conference with travel. So Valpo, they travel to play UNI, so they take a day off and they come to Des Moines and play Drake. And that's just something, I don't know if I just had a brain fart or something and forgot it, but I was looking at the schedule and it just didn't look right, and talked to Pullman about it. But you enjoy it. They're back to work right now, practicing, and they will be ready to play Saturday at 2 o'clock against Valpo. Also happening at 2 o'clock on Sunday, though, this weekend, the Drake Bulldogs men look to get right versus Steve Prohm and Murray State at 2 o'clock. Murray State 1-2 in the Valley. Evansville. Yes, Evansville has a better conference record than Steve Prohm and the Murray State Racers. And I don't know what this Murray State team is. Murray State has had moments where you go, okay, that's the Steve Prohm offense we're accustomed to seeing, what we saw with Iowa State in the good years. And there's then games where Murray State looks like they're all confused. They don't know how to run their own offense. And Murray State lost 4 of their last 5, got blown out against Nebraska, lost to Charlotte, beat Loyola, which was kind of a shock to me, and then just lost to Illinois State. Here's the big key. What we saw from Drake against UIC was they weren't able to get a whole lot from their starters outside of Cam Manyow and Bennett Sturts, of course. Murray State is a good defensive team on the perimeter with their 4-guard lineup. They're first in the Missouri Valley in guarding that 3-point line. So in a game where you need Drake to start to find other ways to get Mascari involved, get Abreu involved, get Cam Manyow more action to help out Bennett Sturts, it's going to be a challenge because Murray State statistically ranks first in the Missouri Valley and guarding the perimeter. They have that 4-guard lineup that is actually kind of a big lineup. You have Jacoby Wood, who's a senior, 14 points per game, 5 assists. Then you have Kalen Milton, a senior, 13 points per game, 4.5 rebounds. AJ Ferguson, who brings the length to that guard position. I mean, he should be playing forward, but he's listed as a guard. AJ Ferguson, senior, 6'7", 12.7 points per game, 5 rebounds. And then Terrence Harcum, a senior, 11.5 points per game. So they have a great 4-man beast in that starting lineup, but just haven't found a rhythm. And while they're statistically first in the Missouri Valley, holding opponents to only shoot 29% from 3, in these last few games, they've allowed an average of 7 made threes against their opponents. 8 against Illinois State, only 3 against Loyola, 6 versus Charlotte, 6 versus Nebraska, 9 in that loss against Indiana State. And Drake, here's your opportunity to get Mitch Mascari, who is due for a big game. He hasn't scored in double figures since his big breakout game December 17th versus Kansas State. To help Bennett Sturts get this offensive ball moving faster. If you get Mitch Mascari the ball on the perimeter, yes, Murray State has a good defense, but Drake, when they make 6 threes or more, they average beating opponents 18.5 points. Almost a 20-point differential on the scoreboard in the final buzzer when Drake makes 6 or more threes. Now, they did lose against UIC with making 6 threes, so that's something to take into consideration. Another thing that helps Drake and what makes me feel more confident going into Sunday's game is Murray State does not guard the field well. Murray State opponent field goal percentage, 45%, a huge help for Drake. A team that loves those pick and rolls, alley-oops to Tavion Banks, those dump down passes to Abreu, backdoor cuts by Sturts, Manyow, Mitch Mascari. That is going to be a huge key. So, biggest one is just utilize the backdoor cuts. Try to attack the weakness of Murray State, which I think we're starting to see is just their defense starting to fall apart a little. While they still lead the Missouri Valley in opponent 3-point percentage, they struggle guarding in the paint, and they've clearly struggled guarding the perimeter in their last 5 games. So, again, just utilize those backdoor cuts, and I'm really excited to see what Ben McCollum is able to do and what he fixed after watching that UIC game where we all clearly saw that Bennett Sturts was really the only guy. Cam Manyow had a really good game, but there wasn't anyone else. So I'm really excited to see what he cleans up, and I think we're about to see a really efficient offense come Sunday against Murray State. Steve Prohm, though, a good coach, will have his guys ready, but I'm shocked by Steve Prohm and how he has come into the Valley I know he had that really tough year with Iowa State, but won, I believe, 2 Big 12 titles. At least one for sure. But he had good teams. He could recruit. I just don't know why there seems to be this lull at Murray State. And in the Missouri Valley, you're kind of given grace because it's hard to get really good coaches. But I did not see a middle-of-the-pack Murray State team year after year under Steve Prohm. Still plenty of basketball to be played. They could figure some things out. They have a huge opportunity to try steal one on the road against Drake. But I just like Drake's offensive ability. I think you're getting a Drake team that maybe is woken up by that first loss, realizes they're not invincible, realizes that they can't always play sloppy and come out on top. I mean, even Coach McCollum in his press conference after the loss to the Flames said, you know, maybe these guys drank the poison a little. He said maybe only 2 or 3 showed up to really play. And that's a painful truth, but what every fan saw. That's what every fan saw against UIC. And I think a coach being that critical and allowing it to, you know, you could have easily gotten coach speak of, you know, UIC played great, which they did, but UIC played great and we just need to be better all around. You could have just gotten that simple quote, but I like Ben McCollum being strict on his guys, harsh love, hard love. I like that. As a fan, as someone who just loves the game of basketball, that's the kind of coach I would want on my team, of holding guys accountable. And all these guys know Ben McCollum. It's been the storyline of this NCAA season. So Drake plays Murray State at 2 o'clock on Sunday. 2 o'clock on Saturday, Drake women play Valpo. I'll be at that game. I'll be at both games. So make sure to follow along at Justin_C Miller on Twitter, as well as at Media Row Pod. We'll have press conference videos. We'll have player interviews more than likely. Sometimes they bring the players, sometimes they don't. So it just depends. But definitely we'll have an interview with Coach McCollum, Coach Pullman, and just really excited for this busy weekend. What a way to kick off 2025 with back-to-back games. Before we wrap up today's show, I owe all of you an apology for my mediocre takes with the college football playoffs. 2-2. I went in the quarterfinals. I thought Oregon was going to win. I thought Georgia was going to win. And they did not. Last night, Notre Dame handles Georgia 23-10. No conference champions in the semis. Every team with a bye lost. And if you told me, hey, Riley Leonard is only going to throw for 90 yards, 1 touchdown, and Notre Dame, who has a really strong running back core, is going to have no rushing touchdowns, as well as Stockton, a backup quarterback, throwing for 234 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Those are the biggest stats. If you just told me that, oh, Bulldogs won. Bulldogs won a 17-10 game. That is what I'd be thinking. And then you look at the stats. Special teams, special plays, special players. Notre Dame, a 98-yard kickoff return to start the second half. Just kind of right then and there. It felt like, to talk about my Seahawks for a second, it felt like when Harvin returned it, where you just go, oh man, Notre Dame's just on one today. They are just on one. 98-yard kickoff return. And Notre Dame didn't look like they struggled. And I mentioned in yesterday's show, it was going to come down to the battle in the trenches. And Georgia's offense and defensive line did not show up. Georgia only 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, while Notre Dame 9 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. They just won the battle on the line. That's what it came down to. A few turnovers by Georgia, that fumble right before the first half, end of the first half. So a few turnovers, but man, Stockton, a backup, played great. There's a few drop balls from his receivers. Didn't get much help from a running back core that I thought would play better. I just thought Kirby Smart, with his 5-1, now 5-2 record, thought with his experience, he was going to get the defensive line and offensive line ready for a tough matchup against a physical Notre Dame team. But just did not. 9 tackles for losses, 4 sacks for Notre Dame. Those are the two that I look at. Yes, you can look at the 98-yard kick return. That's all great. You can look at the fumble recovery. But it came down to the battle in the trenches. And also, great coaching by Marcus Freeman. That play that Kirby Smart complained about afterwards of switching all 11 guys, looking like they were going to punt it. Then they switch 11 guys right away and bring out the offense, and they get Georgia to go offsides. What a play call. Very Dan Lanning-esque of just knowing that rule book from front to back. Because you have Kirby Smart in his press conference say, basically he's been told by the SEC officials that that's not allowed. You can't switch all 11 guys. Well, while that is true to an extent, it's true when the center touches the ball. When the center is set above the ball and touches it, then you can't switch all 11 guys. But Notre Dame never had their center set, never had him touch the ball, and he was able to go back. And they brought out the offense, and just a great play call by Notre Dame. Great play call. And that's what you look back to. If Notre Dame makes a national championship run, that's a play you look at and just go, that's a team that knew you got to try everything to win. And I'm not a huge, I like Marcus Freeman, not a diehard fan, I was kind of in that mindset of I didn't even know if Notre Dame should be in after losing to NIU. But, man, I wonder what the 12-team playoff haters have to say now after great quarterfinals where you have no conference champions, no teams with a bye getting in. What happened to this? Oh, it's just going to be chalk. SEC's just going to roll in. There's only one SEC team, and it was a former Big 12 team a year ago, and that's Texas, who almost lost to a Big 12 team in Arizona State. So I'm loving it. Friday, Ohio State plays Texas. Thursday, you have Notre Dame and Penn State. I wish they were both on the same day. Just give me a full Friday of football. Make it like a March Madness feeling where you could have a game around like 2 o'clock on a Friday at work. Bring in pizza. That'd be great. Just do that. So I would rather have it both days. But with that being said, Thursday, Notre Dame versus Penn State, Ohio State, Texas. Both of those games should be really good. Notre Dame, Penn State could be an all-timer. Both of them really could because those 4 teams match up really well against one another. So, with that being said, we'll wrap up today's show. A huge thank you to everyone liking, subscribing, watching these videos on YouTube. Now you can listen to it on your way to and from work on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff at Media Row Pod. Follow us on Twitter. And a huge thank you to everyone. Keep liking and subscribing. We'll be on TikTok as well at Justin Miller on Air. So keep watching the highlights. Keep supporting. Really appreciate all of you. Have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday to really kick off this Media Row podcast. Thank you all and have a great weekend.